Hey, welcome to Movies Worth Talking About. I am John Carlos, and I am joined, as usual, by
Eddie. Hi.
Hey Eddie, and we're here to talk about. I'm going to do it again for you. And the oldest and the wittiest and the gossip in New York City is Insidious Chapter 2. Because that's what gets stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Chapter 2
Yeah.
came out the same year as The Conjuring. I remember going like, what a funky year, because the timing of the release was, I forget which one like filmed first.
I couldn't care less.
For the record, Eddie's not hip to The Conjuring.
Well,
We're not here to talk about The Conjuring, but just
no.
Eddie's not a fan. I like it, but I don't know. I had a weird give and take with both of these movies this year, or that year it came out. Nitpick, fine, but still, it matters to me. There's some pros and cons to Insidious Chapter 2. One of the little things that just bugs me is how digital the image looks, like how it does not look. Not just that it's a digital film, because that's fine to a certain degree, but there's something about, I know it's not a different frame rate and it's not as drastic as The Hobbit, but it does feel like British television. It doesn't feel like 24 frames. And usually when you do that, it makes the sets feel like sets and yada, yada, yada. So anyway, I'm very aware that this movie's a production when I watch it because of the digital photography. Whereas The Conjuring, maybe the story isn't the same, but like The Conjuring is a very handsome looking movie. So like they were like yin and yang for me that year, of like two James Wan movies that visually were the alpha and omega of each other.
Okay. Haven't rewatched Conjuring in some time, so whenever we do that pod, I'll address that. But as far as this movie, I agree. I feel like I couldn't put it as succinctly as you did, but I definitely had a sense overall. Something about it just felt very, very clean, even compared to the last movie. Almost too pretty, almost like we talked about in our conversation about the first movie, how dark the movie is, and yet it doesn't feel like it's kind of got this gritty realism that you're pushing in your face that makes me want to puke. But with this one, it was, I don't know, it felt like, okay, this is the best way I can put it. Daylight scenes inside the house, you can see the sunlight streaming for, a lot of people backlit and everything like that, and everything inside the house during the day just looked muddy to me, not defined and not crisp at all, but still kind of soft and clean lines. Does that make any sense?
It does.
All right.
It's fun. I'm glad you mentioned our last conversation, because one of the things that struck me this time was, again, like the last movie, you talked about like kind of like the absence of color. And this one really hits you over the bat. It's like, no, this time it's colorful. Not in a bad way, but like that house that they're in for most of it is, it's burgundies, it's greens, it's blues. And I welcome the change pace. If anything, I personally couldn't live in a house with that green, with that like bluish wallpaper and so much burgundy and this horrible fucking red stained window section in the stairs that for some reason at night, I presume that there's a street lamp on the other side.
That gives it that kind of Suspiria.
The eeriest. I couldn't live with that.
Oh no.
Fuck that.
I mean,
evil, like, because when Dalton's at the bottom of the stairs, he's red, and then you go up to the top of the stairs, it's red. Just nope.
Also, one thing, when we're talking about the Lambert, is that their last name? The Lambert house, because it's his mother. So Lorraine, Lambert's home. I got, especially when they started to move into that little parlor across from the room that had the piano, where a lot of action happened. I got such strong Conjuring 2 vibes just from, I think the staircase is on the wrong side, but just something about the layout. I was just kind of like, there's something that James Wan and James Wan-y films really tend to kind of like enjoy this kind of an environment. Like,
Yes.
like I think there's maybe 3 prototypes of houses that he's comfortable shooting in, or that other people are comfortable shooting his kind of content in, and I think we've covered them all so far in the first movie with the 2 houses, and in this movie with this house.
With this house, I would say this house and the God, what is it? Parker Crane? Is that his name?
Yes. Yeah.
Like the Crane house, and then the Conjuring. They all seem to have like the same, like you walk in, there's stairs,
Yeah.
there's a hallway next to the stairs, there's a parlor
Yeah.
to the like. There's. Would you say that there's like a James Wan house? Like a certain kind of like, oh, this is a James Wan house
with variations on a theme. Yes.
I mean, even that super narrow on the outside and then gargantuan on the inside house from Malignant. You walk in and it's like stairs, and then to the right a hall that leads to a parlor or like a living room.
But at least that one had maybe more a distinctly kind of villa feel than the other ones, because I mean the exterior of the San Francisco house here. Wait, is it San Francisco? I just tell myself it's San Francisco. I don't even know. But wherever Barbara Hershey lives, Lorraine lives in this movie. It's just maybe I'm saying San Francisco because it's just kind of got that, like, obviously an old house, very, very narrow, very high and tall, but I wouldn't say kitschy, but character to it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the first 2 homes in Insidious 1 are both white and bright. They let in a lot of light, and I remember watching this one in theaters, going, "Oh, well, this is definitely more of a horror movie house."
Yeah.
But also you could argue that, they say it has been in the family. Like, it is an older house. You could tell it was built before those other houses. And I get it, but it definitely, I don't love this movie the way I love the first one. And, one of the things about this one is there's a difference between like reveling and having fun in like the horror tropes, and the fact that Insidious 1 seems to be made by people who know we're making a haunted house movie, and I'm with you going like, yes, you are. Whereas this one, I feel like they try to hit a few more tropes that I could feel them reaching more, and I'm less celebrating and going like, oh, here's a creepy kid scene, here's a creepy lady scene. Oh, with spooky rock. Remember when rocking chairs move when you're in, like, we're hitting a lot of things, and I feel the grab bag more, including spookier house.
Interesting.
And parts of this movie really work for me, but I also do feel like there's some other parts where I can feel you trying a bit.
Can I ask you a question? What was your initial response when you saw it in the theaters?
My opinion has never really changed much over the years.
Okay.
Same thing. I'm like, oh, this looks digital. Oh, like some of these things aren't landing for me. I feel like I'm watching people trying to scare me and not actually scaring me.
Okay.
Like the rocking horses moving on their own. It just it felt like a neat gag, not, I'm in it and I'm scared.
See,
there's about 2 big moments where I'm really in it and scared.
I think I have one. But because I have to say, the first time I saw it, I did see it in its initial release. I saw it alone. I saw it during the day after a shift. I was waiting for a friend to get off of his shift. I think I had about 2.5 hours to play with, and the movie fit very, very nicely in between when I got off work and when I was going to meet up with him. So I watched the movie alone, and I was very excited. And I remember it scaring me. I remember feeling shaken. I didn't know what to expect, and maybe it's just, experiencing something for the first time and the exhilaration of seeing another Insidious. Because after the first movie, of course, this was a franchise. I was welcoming more movies, sure. To be a part of, to just keep the story going. And I still want that. But I remember I watched it again sometime later after it got released in my own home on probably DVD through either Netflix or Blockbuster, when they used to mail in their little, whatever. I was jumping between the Netflix mailing service and the Blockbuster one. And I don't remember if I've seen it now before today, because I watched it today in preparation. I don't know if this was my 3rd or 4th time seeing it, but I will say this, whatever it is, each time I've seen it, I've liked it a little less. And this one was the roughest sit for me.
Aww.
It really was.
I mean, this is my fourth time seeing it. I saw it in theaters, bought it on Blu-ray, watched it again, and then many years went by. I watched it about maybe 4 or 5 years ago with my cousin because my cousin was starting to get into horror movies, and I was like his horror Sherpa. Steering him away from stuff like the Texas Chainsaw remake and steering him more towards good things. And we watched Insidious Chapter 2 and The Conjuring. And he, I could tell like James Wan worked on them. But anyway, so that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And then this was like my fourth time ever. And I think the most I ever liked it was the first time. And even then I still had reservations. But there's still little things that work for me. So like I'll tell you, at least personally, right off the bat.
Yes.
I'm in the theater and I'm at home watching for the fourth time. And the second we just start off in the 80s and Elise shows up, I just go, oh, this is because when he was a little kid, and oh my God, it's young Lorraine, and oh, it's young Elise, and I'm enjoying the ride for an opening scene. Except, you have an O?
I do already. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll give you my O. Mine's a petty little bitch O.
Okay, mine is too. Go.
I'm watching young Carl with his beard, and I'm like, that's the best beard we can get. Holy fuck, that looks like community theater. That's a rough. Holy shit. Not to be an asshole, but like, are we supposed to believe that's a real beard? Oh my God. And then ironically enough, when we see Carl as an older man, that goatee, I'm like,
consistency.
Can we just maybe I know maybe the visual cue has to be facial hair, so we go young Carl, old Carl, because like Lorraine's hair is the same. But like I could have got it with just the glasses.
Yeah.
But they insist on giving just don't give him a beard then if that's all you got. Oh my God. I loved the low budget Spirit of Blumhouse and ghosts with just foundation makeup and some mush under their eyes, but
yeah, Blumhouse. But there you go.
Anyway, that's my bitching.
Okay, my bitching is for completely different reasons. Number one, okay, I want to say I didn't walk in today to this movie because I already I knew what to expect. I'd seen it before, but I didn't go in with a shut mind. I didn't walk in going like, God, this is going to be rough. I walked in with a really open-minded, a real willingness to see, because I do remember favoring it over, shall we say, another sequel in this franchise. And after today, I don't know if that's true anymore. I have to revisit that sequel too, which we will.
Yeah.
But it was shocking to me because I immediately started to feel things dropping off. While you felt like kind of an exhilaration with the flashback and everything like that, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. This is different. And that's not bad. But I started missing the feeling I got, the satisfaction I got almost immediately with how strategically and delicately they worked in the original movie to just kind of inspire unease in me from the get-go with the sound design.
Oh yeah,
and with
that
just
is
the way
not happening here.
No, not at all. It's just kind of like, here we go. And it's like, okay, fine. Again, it's fine. And if what they were doing kind of hooked me in, especially with repeat viewings, that's the true test, just, of whether it's a good movie that will stand the test of time for me or not. With me, oh boy, that's a mouthful. But with me, we'll get to it. But with me, the first strike against this movie was a line that young Elise says when she comes in, because he's just like, he says something to the extent of like, I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have any other choice but to call you, or something like that. She says, oh, I understand. You had a big problem and you thought you'd make it my problem too. Is that it? And then there's just this awkward silence where they're all just kind of standing like, and then she just goes, I'm teasing. And I'm like, was Elise like this when she was younger? Because I mean, they're obviously not comfortable. And that was really passive aggressive what you just did, and kind of I don't know, socially clumsy, and I never got that Elise was a socially clumsy person, especially as intuitive as she is. It was a big character trip for me. I was just like, I tripped over that moment, and I was just kind of like, you know, when you trip over something and you look back, like, what the fuck was that? That's what that moment was for me. And I was just kind of like, already, I feel like they're trying to write something like an idea of something that maybe Leigh Whannell had, because he came back to write the screenplay, and he and James Wan had the idea together, apparently. And I don't know. Immediately, I was just kind of like, okay, that's not Elise. Sorry.
You know, it's funny because I didn't even catch that, because I don't know. I don't know. And now that you mention it, I just think, I don't know. I mean, I was a shittier person when I was younger than I am now. So like, I don't know. I mean, I mean, it just bounced off me like, okay, she's a confident woman, and he needs help, and she's being a little sassy about it. I don't know. I actually had a moment of the opposite where I'm like, oh, it's Elise, and it's like it's right before they cut to Dalton in the chair. I think they're looking at the photos.
You mean Josh?
Yeah, sorry. And I think she looks at the photos, and she like gets real grim and looks up at Lorraine, and immediately like drops her face and smiles, and it's like, okay, let's go. Like, I'm like, oh, look, you're here to help. Like, you're startled, you're unnerved, but that smiling woman who shows up, you know, 40 years later, I see that helpful woman in this moment.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, did you bump into the whole fact that like, let's say what Jocelyn Donahue gets to like perform as Lorraine, but like we have to voice over.
Yes. That I noticed my initial.
Yeah.
I know
Lindsay Syme or Lindsay Seam.
Whatever her. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I'm in the theater. I'm like, wait, what's okay?
I know. I mean, maybe her voice is. I haven't heard her speak, so I don't know if her voice is so vastly different from Lin Shaye's that they were like, we have to do something about this. Kind of like I never forget the actor's name, but in, you know, young Clark Kent in the Superman movie, Donner's Superman, and he had his own speaking voice in all of the young Superman scenes, and then they had Christopher Reeve go in and just voice over, you know, all of it. That worked for me though. That's kind of like how you do it. This one, it does pull me out. I'm sitting there just kind of like, just focus on the movie, Eddie. Just get it back if you can. Just look into the screen, and you know, this is happening whether you want it to or not. And I kept telling myself that. Another thing I noticed too was that young Josh is played by another actor in this movie. He was played by a boy called Josh Feldman in the first movie, who I thought was perfect, and I mean, bared enough of a resemblance to Patrick Wilson that like all those photographs worked, and also had a kind of timeless quality that I didn't even think about how long the span of time was when all those photographs were taken. It felt like it could have been years that, you know, Josh as a young boy was followed by this woman in black, the ghost. And then I see Garrett Ryan in the photos, and immediately it looks like they were all they're all shot on the same day. They were all photoshopped. It feels like it was the same photo. They just kind of photoshopped either his head on the body or even just his entire body, like over Josh Feldman's. And he's a good actor, Garrett Ryan is. I like the performance that he gives, because I get kind of everything that I need from him. I just wish because even the pictures you mentioning, like we were talking about, like just even kind of like the resolution and the feeling we get, the photos looked so old and so authentic in the first movie that I didn't doubt that they were photographs of Josh. And this time looking at them, they looked smooth, they looked weird, they looked the way photos look like when you mess with them to try and make your movie. So I noticed that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know where I want to jump to.
I have one more thing to say about the flashback if you want to tie it up. Okay, I couldn't remember and I didn't have time to look at the first movie again. Is there a metronome in the first movie when Rose Byrne is playing the piano? Do you remember?
I don't know about playing the piano, but they do use it when Josh goes under.
Oh, they use it when Josh goes under. Okay, cool. Because I was just like, there's a metronome again. For some reason, I thought maybe I was just mixing it up in my head with something on a surface like the baby monitor or something like that. But I just wondered, like, does James Wan have a thing about metronomes?
Well, I mean, if he does, it's good for Elise because she doesn't bring her own. She's lucky that
Yeah,
real time she goes to a house where there's a
with a
piano
piano.
player in the family. You know, I'll use your metronome. I keep forgetting mine. You know,
Right.
I was just gonna wave a clock, but thank goodness you have that. You know,
Right. But
I
the
mean,
one thing that I did like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I do appreciate the opening scene isn't simply a flashback for flashback's sake, and then it just fucks off, and you're like, what's the point? The fact that he gets up, just I'll show you, and he does the point, and the door opens, and there's that connects to the rest of the movie, makes the opening scene matter. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And there were a few other nods. Like I like that we started on like the sphere of light, like in Josh's room, and I'm just kind of like, oh right, that's where where we saw James Wan in the first movie, and now we're back in the
And I
same.
love the movie plays on your familiarity.
Yes, I like that
That's good.
too. But then logistically, like I love that Elise gets scratched down, like basically from the crook of her elbow down to her wrist, it looks like, by this entity in the closet, runs downstairs and immediately reveals all of the exposition that she needs to with this open wound on her arm. And I was just kind of like, we could have taken our time. We could have gotten her, give me some time for Lorraine. It just set up more context for these characters. Like, get a still moment that's like beyond that moment where they're quiet, they both kind of like calm down a bit, and Lorraine is tending to like her wound and could be putting a bandage on, and now they're talking about it now that the madness has kind of subsided. I would
Eddie,
prefer that.
no, we have to get to the next scene faster because this movie doesn't have time for that.
Speaking of time, though,
it's
yes.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say it's very plot driven. Like each scene, like we got to get to the next thing. We don't have a lot of time for a lot of things to breathe because we have to give our exposition. And Lord, there's a lot of exposition in this movie.
Well, that's another thing. But I do have to say I forgot about the time jump being exposed, or at least like the ambiguous kind of like him standing and speaking, because I was watching this time going, oh, we got to this sooner than I remember. Okay, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So I was just kind of like, okay, cool. I like that. I like again introducing again this theme that we return to in the movie of mysterious things happening maybe in your present moment that you don't understand, and then once you're in the further, they make as an audience member, they make all the sense that they need to. So I appreciated that too. And I think that's everything for the flashback for me.
Although what I don't appreciate, jumping all the way to the end, when they're in the further, they found Elise, they go find Josh in the 80s, and they need his help. And now, where does the guy's memories like live? Oh, it's over here. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, and then they go down the steps, and then Elise, as if we all are stupid, goes, oh, so that's what that was about. I'm like,
I know.
Thanks, Rick Flag, for fucking explaining it to me like I'm stupid.
You really? I mean, and almost into the camera, like
like borderline.
So that was what that was about. I mean, Lin Shaye is turning in a great performance. It's the line. We don't need it. We don't need it. But that's the thing, is I feel like it oversells. That's one of the strongest elements for me of the movie, is this whole theme of like, trapping interdimensionally, as it were, and time and space mean nothing, and it just kind of like gravitate toward what attracts you. We talked about it in the first movie discussion, and I love that they build on that. But I don't love, one thing I didn't need was when they sit there and they review the footage and then they enhance it and they see the ghost of adult Josh in the background. I didn't need that prior to the exposition. I was actually looking forward. I was thinking like, it would work better if that's all we got in the opening, and then the next moment we revisit it in the movie is when it's actually happening, like in front of us through adult Josh's eyes. Because then it would make me gay gasp in that kind of like, it's him, and instead it's kind of spoiled, like, oh, so adult Josh was there at some point. That probably has something to do with the further.
And now we're gonna go do the thing that I saw in the video.
And also, okay, we're like, I think it was all within 30 minutes. This movie immediately flashes back many times. Because we flash back to that within the first 30 minutes, and then we flash back to the first movie in the first 30 minutes. That brings us to present day. with, okay, strike number 2.
What do you?
I'll read to you what I wrote.
Okay.
So Renee picked up the camera at the end of Insidious 1, saw the ghost bride in the photo, obviously. Otherwise, what is that reaction shot about? They keep that in. Then forgot about it immediately, but visibly suspected her husband, Josh, of killing Elise in real time. And then hours later, when Detective Sendall is interrogating her, he asks her, did you believe him in his denial of like any of his guilt or having any hand in this? And she answers, yes, I believed him. My husband isn't capable of killing anybody. I'm like, really? But I mean,
well, and also she doesn't say yes immediately. She's like, her face is like, well, and she's all, yes, of course, my husband could. And I'm like, whoa, that first 2 seconds was all the answer I needed. But
and it's the beginning of a huge snowball of mistakes for Renee for me in this movie.
Yeah, that's
the way she's written. It's not Rose Byrne's fault. She's doing the best.
I appreciate that she is suspecting her husband, only because that means you guys heard him screaming in the kitchen in the last movie, where they're just like one room over, and you will hear that.
But I don't like
I mean, I'm not saying literally.
Yeah. I don't like believing that Renee, the Renee of the first movie, who has been through all of the events of the first movie, is now coming into this movie and hears everything she hears, sees everything she sees, and is still comfortable going home with that man. And just immediately I started rewriting, like, well, what would I want in the opening of this movie? And I just wrote, the movie should have started in the further, my opinion, with like something like Josh screaming to be let back in. And then on the other side of it, we see Renee at least fending off perhaps an attack from Josh's body with, we didn't know his name yet, and we didn't know it was a him. And we still don't know pronoun wise like what was going on there. But anyway, Parker Crane, fending off Parker Crane in her husband's body. And then I don't know, maybe so she can be alive for the rest of the movie. Maybe like the rest of the family comes in and then Parker Crane just leaves because it's easier. And then everything is about finding that body while Josh tries to navigate his way back to his body. We take a long time getting to Josh in the further. Far too long for my
Although
taste.
I do think it's a hell of a reveal, though.
It is, but
that scene could have happened.
It was the least
half an hour earlier.
Yeah, it was the least impactful it ever was this time, because I was like, really? We're still not there, Right. I mean, I'm looking at my watch. I was looking at my phone going, we're still not there. I kept checking my phone repeatedly throughout this movie.
But you are right about I didn't check my phone, but I had the similar feeling with the piano thing, or I kept waiting to get to it. I'm like, we haven't got to it yet. I remember.
Yeah.
No, but Renee and Lorraine both keep this guy around, and they both bring up like, hey, shit's weird. I saw ghosts. He's like, no, just fucking ignore them. They'll go away. And I'm like, there's an awful lot of odd behavior with Josh that you both just seem to put up with, that I feel like you wouldn't put up with.
Well, also, at least Lorraine seems to be kind of doing, like, she's turning to other resources and trying to figure out what she can do.
And then pulls Renee aside and say, hey, we need to fucking talk.
But it's like, because Lorraine is doing that, Renee just has to kind of like get lost in the mix. And the worst thing, not the worst, there's a lot of, but one of the worst things that I don't like is we go back into the pattern of the first movie, only it is not, I don't like it now, of just like Renee sensing that something's wrong, insisting that something's wrong. She hears some kind of force slap her baby and then abduct her baby. She runs downstairs, sees the baby's accessories flying every which way. Then she gets slapped unconscious. And then when she tells her husband about it, he tries to pull this shit about like denying it and pushing back against her. And she's stressing over something in the house and her children being in peril, and he's not listening. And I'm like, haven't we been here before? I saw this movie. I don't want to see this movie again unless I'm watching this movie.
And I didn't bring this. I mean, I mentioned this last time. just sort of asked you like whether you felt like, it was the thing where it seems to be Renee's struggle for the whole movie, but then it's a man, her husband, who goes into the further and takes care of things. And we, argue that maybe he doesn't really fix anything though. Therefore, it's not necessarily like a anti-feminist sort of thing. But once again, we have a finale where a different male in her family is like, well, I'm going to go into the further. I'm going to get daddy. You stay here. And I'll have another male figure go fucking fix everything.
Well, it's not even
I'm starting to
that.
notice the pattern.
Well, not even that. Like at the end, like this, I had a lot of problems thematically with this movie, but like one thing that I wrote kind of like as a thesis at the very end, or I don't know if it was a thesis, it was just a response at the very end when I had seen the whole thing. I just wrote, all the women in this movie from the first movie are either rendered defenseless somehow, or not either, are rendered defenseless somehow. And the one powerful, perceivably feminine character from the first movie is literally turned into a man twice over. And that's the heavy, that's the character of like the Black Bride. Because not only do we reveal, oh no, that was a man the whole time, which we'll get into it, but also now that character has gone into Josh, and now we're watching a man inside of a man brutalize women and silence them and fend them off. And maybe that was supposed to inspire some kind of desire for me to see them succeed ultimately, which I guess it did, but really all it did was make me tired.
Sure. I mean, he's following his old MO because as we see in his little room of bodies, it's all women. So like clearly he has a pattern. So that doesn't really offend me so much as all the other things. But before we get into that, this other convenience of like, I remember going into this movie going, oh my God, so the bride in black is in Josh. They're so screwed. And then it just seems to be like, well, no, there's a different lady haunting the house, and he mostly just spends his time telling them not to worry about hauntings. Jesus. How much danger are they really? Yeah, I don't, what? And then you see him talking to seemingly himself, and he's talking to his mother, and his mother saying, you need to kill them. And he's like, no. And I'm like, so I'm watching a killer ghost trying really hard not to kill people. Okay. Like that's just, so all it does lead to a series of scenes that allow us to know that he's possessed. But like, it feels like an outline of an idea of things. I don't really understand his motivation. It's sort of a nebulous threat, and doesn't make for the best. And then okay, so let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
The bride in black, as I mentioned last time, really fucking bothered me.
Yeah, me too.
And one of the things that they did that I think succeeded, and I don't want this to come off in some weird way, but like they purposefully cast a man to play a woman, so that something about seeing the female form but not necessarily a feminine face would make you feel like something is off about this.
Sure. I'm
not saying that women dressed as men are naturally off, but I get what they're going for in the movie, and it worked because creepy makeup is one thing, but also I'm like, okay, yes, this head, this face, and this outfit, I am disturbed seeing that in a window, looking out. But to take a thing where like that was a neat little movie trick, we cast a dude to play a woman, and then to lean into it and make it the text immediately, I thought was stupid.
Me too.
But also, I mean, I am a woke lib. Really kind of problematic in the because the older I get and the more I've been exposed to the trope of the coding of villains as queer.
Yeah.
And then the older I get, the more I see it done. And then the more I look back on things where it didn't bother me in the 90s, but like I think I mentioned somewhere before, like I watched Silence of the Lambs again. And this time with Buffalo Bill, I'm just like, ugh. Of course he's queer. Of course lipstick. He's weird. He likes to dress like ladies. He's got to be a killer. Like I'm just so done with it. So to have, even if it's a tragically inflicted thing, I don't care what the origin is, but it just felt tired from a story standpoint, and it felt tired from like, a contemporary eyes standpoint. Also,
Buffalo Bill was in a movie that was made, what is it, like 30 years ago now,
Mhm.
over 30 years ago. And
It's a different time, Eddie.
well, also subsequently, as a member of the LGBTQ community, plus, um, I first of all, I never found personally, I'm not saying other people shouldn't, but I never particularly took offense to anything that I saw in the movie, because I felt like you're not, I didn't feel like Jonathan Demme was making a movie about just like, yeah, look how sick he is. And I know some people get that on their own, and that's their problem. But for me, my opinion, but I would never tell anybody, so you must share my opinion. It's just mine.
Sure.
That, and also subsequently, because I've heard Ted Levine, who played Buffalo Bill, speak to what he did in that movie and how because a lot of people thought he was playing predominantly like a gay man, and he wasn't. He said,
No.
if I were playing a gay man and I were a serial killer, I would be killing men, and I was killing women, and there was something about that. But then that creates a whole trans allegory that I also understand is problematic, and none of that was ever my intention. All I wanted to do was serve the material to the best of my ability, and obviously I failed. And I'm like, oh my god, because I love his performance in that
I'm
movie.
not talking trash. I'm just saying I felt a little tired when I watched that movie like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. I
Having
revisited it recently, and I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But also, I think because I know the context of like where it's coming from, because also Jonathan Demme, I know, felt so bad about it in almost in real time once it was released, and he got a hit back from like trans people who were saying we're sick of being depicted this way, and gay people saying we're sick of being depicted this way. He was like, I'm gonna make Philadelphia, I'm sorry.
Well, no, and look, not to get onto a silent side tangent, but like isolated on its own, sure, fine, whatever,
right?
But when sometimes I just let my brain think about all the other, because again, if he's not playing gay, it's definitely under the umbrella of nebulous queer,
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just tired of it. It just seems, especially in this genre, such a lazy, easy thing to do.
Well, because that was the other thing that stunned me. I was like, this movie isn't even 10 years old. And I just wrote like the whole sexual identity angle and the castration element. That's it's even the way, and God bless Barbara Hershey, but even the way she delivers the line, I don't know if it was the way she was directed to, or if they thought they were making a movie, but the way she says it, like, he was trying to castrate himself. Like, oh my God, that's inconceivable. Like, how horrible, like, it's so just demonizing of anyone who veers off of a binary track, and that bothered me. And then also but I was just right, I'm also over the whole creepy girly boy thing. Like, oh my God, a little boy in a girl's dress. I was watching it just going like, this didn't horrify me the first time I watched it. I remember even the first time I watched it, all I felt was empathy, because I thought they were telling the story of like someone who was put into this position unwillingly, forcibly by their parent. And obviously that's the story they're telling. The problem is the fact that this person embraces it and we never get any kind of insight psychologically. That's another thing. They at least made an effort in Silence of the Lambs to explain the psychology behind certain inclinations this person would have. I don't feel like anything is explained beyond, okay, they say,
other than the idea that he's a girly man.
Like, well, and also they even say, Carl is the one who said, what the fuck is this? Carl said he killed for his mother because she forced him to. He wanted his childhood back. And I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean? How did she force him to kill? I mean, I guess what he's trying to say in a nutshell, it's a very underwritten way of saying it, is that she demonized his father to him and insisted, like encroached this other binary identity on him that he had no say in. It was forced upon him, and ultimately made him hate, I'm guessing, I'm really doing the work for the screenwriters here, made him hate women because he hates his mother. So he kills women because he's trying to kill his mother. But then he's also got his mother telling him what he has to do in Josh's body if he wants to survive. And I'm like, okay, is this the ghost of his mother, or is this just his inner voices, his own inner demons
No,
that are
it's got to be a
living?
ghost because Renee sees the ghost.
No, and I know that
And
the ghost is there, but is she haunting
yeah.
Parker in Josh also?
Yes.
It's just so weird.
Yeah, and also like it almost feels like he's killing women because of his mother, but then also it's the destruction of the memory of his mother that frees him. So then it's not. I don't know. I just.
I also don't understand her being so against, because again, they didn't think it through. I'm like, if this is a woman who is so mad that she, pushed this agenda onto, or I won't even say agenda, she pushed this identity onto her son to kind of convince him he's now her daughter. Also, in response to his loser father, we don't know what happened there, but apparently your father gave you that name, so now that's not your name anymore. Now you're Marilyn, and pretty name. But I don't understand if she's so abusive about Parker being Parker and not being Marilyn. Parker has now moved into a male body. Why does she want him to thrive in this body and survive then? It doesn't make any sense. If she's abusing him 1 minute as a boy for being a boy and then has now become a live man, why would she be in favor of him carrying on that life?
Eddie, you're putting more thought into it than
the writers did.
And I take no joy in saying that, because holy goddamn, do I love some of Leigh Whannell and James Wan's other movies. But
me too, but not this.
It feels like something where, we made The Conjuring, and then like, hey, you want to make Insidious 2? If you shoot it now, we can have it out by September.
That's what it feels like.
Okay.
Sure.
What's the villain? It's the villain's this. Here you go. I honestly though, and I don't know if it's meant to be an homage, but I swear to God, dude, Sleepaway Camp did so much better.
Yes, and that's again an even older movie.
First of all, and there's so much camp, and even I think it's all revealed in just one scene, but that one little flashback, of like, and I just like, I wanted a little girl, and like, sure, it's camp, it's kind of played for a gag, and at the time it was, somewhat insensitive, but also not too serious about itself.
No.
But I mean, that one threaded the needle as far as getting the tone right, so that the simplicity of it worked for the story it was telling.
It was very punk rock, that movie.
Yeah. Whereas this story, and this tone, it needs more, and they didn't deliver more.
The only part of the entire element that delivers for me, and I'm not saying it works, but delivers, it'll make sense when I finish my sentence, is Danielle Bisutti playing the mother. And I don't think first of all, putting a backstory on the Bride in Black was a mistake, in my opinion. Huge mistake, because what made that character scary to me was not knowing anything except that it was just a looming presence.
Bingo.
I wanted to say in answer to like what you were saying about the first movie, another thing about it was I never really thought, like, even though I think I called her like, the creepy old lady or the whatever. If it had been a male character, I would have been like, oh, the creepy old man. It was never about the gender. That was never the thing that scared me. It was never like, oh my gosh.
Expression.
It's a woman, but look what she looks like. It wasn't that. It was about energy. It was about intention, and just a being that seems to mean you harm and seem to be almost planning with like malice and glee, malicious glee, whatever it is they're going to do to you. They just like looking at you, and all you get is like a feeling of dread, because they're planning something, and they're planning something against you. That I did not get, because in this movie, all of a sudden, we get the fucking...
someone who's a serial killer of females, not little boys.
And also just the way the character is shot. Gone is the silent stillness, and in is all of this, strobe light, like man who laughs, a lot of Joker angles of a grin with all the creases in the face. And I'm just
little James Wan-y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little too James Wan-y, because again, like that in and of itself stylistically would not have been bad, but we talked about it again, how the different ghosts in the first movie were handled, and each one was handled so specifically in different specific ways and seemed to have different intents and different backstories. We never really learned about any of them. We only got glimpses, maybe.
And we didn't fully understand them, and we understand
Yeah.
him way too. I mean, obviously not enough in text, but so much more. I also couldn't help but think of like how I know this wasn't a problem when this movie came out, but it just popped in my head, this idea of like a man
Yeah.
who passes as a woman and then goes and kills people is like the Fox News viewers' worst nightmare. Remember when the argument against trans was like, well, that means men are going to be dressing like women and going into the bathrooms, and they're gonna abduct you or kill you. And I'm like, this is literally what they're worried about. Is
I know
the Bride in Black?
It
Feels
feels like a propaganda
in this movie
film,
as it was when people would say it in real life.
Absolutely.
So
that's another problematic element of it for me, is just like, even given everything that's happening these days, as we're, I won't dwell on it because, movie discussion and fun, but ultimately there are a lot of people who aren't having a lot of fun in states across the country. Parents are now being punished for accepting and supporting their trans children. And that's why another thing, like just kind of like witnessing everything about the framework of a mother with a little boy in a dress and it being depicted as abuse. That's the whole problem.
Right. This is actually the depiction that they're trying to like, that they think is real and want to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
think whoever wrote the Don't Say Gay bill, I think they saw Insidious Chapter 2.
I know, right? It feels
and they thought it was a documentary.
Oh my God. Also, because there was another thing. There's so much to cover, but one thing that is just to kind of get off of this, because there is more to delve into here, and if we keep talking about this aspect, we'll never stop. But one thing kind of adjacent to it, in terms of just the character of the Bride in Black, of Parker Crane in Josh, there was the exchange that he had with Renee. That one exchange that I remember the first time I saw it in the theater, I thought, well, I have no argument for that, where he's just kind of like, they have they're dead. She's like, we have to get out of the house. We have to grab the kids. We have to move. And she's like, no, you haven't been to the other side. You don't know what they want. And I'm just kind of like, oh, this is the first time I saw it. I remember thinking, this is kind of interesting. A little perspective from the other side that Josh can deliver, because he's been in the further and seen the dead, but it can really come from the point of view of the spirit, because the spirit has been dead. And that said, the way Patrick Wilson plays it is brilliant, because it almost sounds like he's making sense. He's just kind of like, they can't hurt you. They have no power over you. They just want what you have, life. And, and they can never do whatever. This time had a big problem with it. And I wrote this. The line, they have no power over you, versus the line that was never spoken, or lines that were never spoken by Renee that should have been, number one, our daughter was slapped by one of them. Number two, I've been licked by one of them in the first movie. And number two, if you didn't kill Elise, one of them did. So how can they do us no harm? How do they have no power over us? And Renee was not written to be smart enough to ever reach that kind of I'm getting so angry, I'm losing my vocabulary, to reach that kind of like conclusion on her own. All she could do is sit there and have it bounce off of her when Lorraine says, there's something wrong with Josh. And she's like, have you noticed it too? And I'm like, I'm seething. I'm seething.
You are correct. I know it's an opinion, but you are correct.
Thank you.
I also just bump into this idea again. It's a lazy sort of thing that just allows you to have scenes but not really go anywhere. Which is, so the Bride in Black gets inside Josh and immediately decides, oh, I'm not going to kill people. And then it's his so this insidious, these insidious things that want to take you over, and they want life. And he's so insidious that he just says, well, I don't want to kill any people. And then his mom's like, no, you got to fucking kill them. You got to kill them or you're going to wither away. And he spends the whole movie not killing them because he doesn't want to, until like he ultimately kind of has to, because he's starting to wither away and his mom's been yelling at him to do it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, like, is that, I don't get it. Like, then is that, so when they say that they crave life, that's such a great nebulous sort of idea. I think I've said nebulous like 3 times in this fucking podcast. Okay. It's such an obtuse idea.
There you go.
Thanks. But to see it in practice, he carries them so much, just like it. The ghosts feel so lost, and then to see one actually get in there and just have like a normal vocabulary and like get to pretend to be a person, and then that's not scary. If they were sitting there like fucking Jack Torrance, and you're like, hey, dad, and they're like, what? And had like a limited vocabulary and really act, but I feel like this guy could very easily just go to work and pass it all off.
But that said, okay, this is another, you just totally you said Jack Torrance, and you
the fucking finale.
You've triggered me. Well, because there's a path there though, because I have a problem with this too. I'm sorry, but okay. Tooth falls out. Josh isn't feeling well. Rose Byrne leaves the house. Josh can't do anything about it because Josh isn't feeling well. And that's the way in for Carl and Specs and what's his fucking name? The other one. Why do I want to call him Hunter? The other guy, Huckster? Tucker. Okay. So Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's all, remember it. Okay. Tucker and Specs versus Evil. Ooh, where's that
I'd watch it.
T-shirt? Yeah, I'd watch that. Anyway, so they all get their little syringy thing and go in and everything like that. Now we've established that Parker Crane in Josh's body is very weak, growing weaker with every passing moment. Yet, while we've established that, throughout the entire third act, whenever anybody tries to cross Parker Crane in Josh's body, Josh can overpower all of them, almost John Wick style, like to the point where Parker Crane and Josh is pinning people. Parker Crane and Josh is maybe getting, I don't remember if it was stabbed or injected or whatever the fuck, but like you feel like you get the upper hand, and before you're just kind of like, oh, they got him. He can retaliate with like a jab to you or a punch to you, and like basically takes out everybody who tries to push against him and stop like his impetus, and I don't understand. It's like, okay, so is Parker Crane strong or is Parker Crane weak? Make up your mind, movie, because this is pretty strong. And also, we made this whole deal about the living in the further being stronger than the dead. Why is the dead, who is now in the living, but is now decomposing because it's unnatural, I suppose, and has to kill to get stronger, whatever that means. I don't know if that means like you'll soak up their soul, like hocus pocus style, or if you'll pass from body to body, like a parasite, like a parasite, another word that got used again in this movie, or whatever that means. Somehow you have to keep killing to keep your energy up, and then all of a sudden you have all this energy to defeat all of these people who are living, to kind of like meet your own agenda. That's the proper place to use that word, agenda. And I just think it's lazy writing, lazy conflict setting. And then ultimately I checked out of the finale, the big climax, just because I felt like I've seen The Shining. I don't need to see it again. Renee is not Wendy, certainly not the Wendy of the movie, which is what I get an essence of here. And I just don't understand the logistics that got us here. And I feel like instead of paying homage to a movie you like a lot, make your own damn movie. I'm so sick of it. I'm tired. I do have good things to say too.
Oh, I can't wait to get to those, Eddie.
I just want to get all the bad stuff out of the way so that we can just kind of frolic.
Before we move on from this subject, I just have one more thing to say on this subject.
Mm.
In the first movie, when the bride in black is there,
yeah,
I mean, obviously, it's. I didn't say this last time, but Dalton becoming an open vessel and drawing so many people to his body was because he was away. Whereas Josh isn't really away that long, but still, even when he's asleep, people realize, oh, like he can be a vessel. So the bride in black was attracted to him.
Mm-hmm.
The impression I got just from the rules of the first movie or the facts that are laid out is that once Josh is in the further, like the bride in black can smell him or whatever, and it's you were the one I was after.
Yes.
Simply because I pursued you. You were a vessel. My ghost brain was obsessed with you. The fact that in this one, Carl explains, well, that's why, is because he's trying to reclaim his childhood. And I'm like, well, if he was trying to reclaim his childhood, then why the fuck is he interested in Josh as an adult?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we've already made that
your own
movie.
Shit in your own movie, though. Like,
yeah, and we've already made that movie where like a demon wants to desperately get inside the body, or the vessel of a young boy, and
by making him a serial killer of women.
Yeah.
And then wanting to get inside the body of it doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, it doesn't.
I don't understand.
I also, I hate that when Lorraine and Renee finally turn up for the climax, they have no weapons. They're walking into a quiet house, which they shouldn't be. They're like full on calling out names, and never the names of the people. They even call out for Josh, and Josh doesn't make himself clear. Nobody reaches for anything to try and smack someone with. No one is prepared. And again, I'm like, if you really believe that something bad is going down, why are you just going to walk into the belly of the beast? Yes.
Even if they had weapons, the way this movie is staged and directed, they would have fucked it up. Because I couldn't. I think it's Tucker who it's Tucker that comes in because he's already like knocked Specs over.
Yeah.
Tucker comes out with a taser.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Puts his left hand on his shoulder and tases him, and I'm like, you know how electricity works? Come on, movie. I want to see the real scene where Tucker's like, oh.
Yeah, that actually, and you know what? That would have worked so much better. Like for people who need a comedic beat, they can laugh at it.
Sure.
And for the rest of us who are just like, no, you idiot, and then that takes him out and we don't have to deal. That's the moment I was referencing where he's tasing him. And yet Parker Crane still has the agility to, what is it, like throw him across the room or whatever he does with him. I think, he
I don't even care about the agility. I'm just talking about the fact that
I know.
Would run.
Yes, I get that. Oh, also we had an echo of like the line that worked so well in the first movie, just like, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son. Lorraine says in this movie, it's not the house, it's Josh. And I'm like, shut up. Not Barbara Hershey, but the writers. Stop writing the women so badly. Dear God, everybody's written so badly in this movie. It pisses me off.
Well, you know who else is written badly that I have a problem with? And it's my other one of my big questions in the movie.
Who?
The fucking, I forget what her actual name is, but Parker Crane's mom / Mother Mortis.
Yes.
Mater Mortis.
Mrs. Crane, Danielle Basutti playing Mrs. Crane.
By the way, props to Danielle Basutti. A horror favorite of mine.
I
fucking love her.
You know what? And that's okay. Before you go on, because we need to praise her. We need to adequately praise her. Because I started to say this and I didn't get to finish because I have so much to say. But she would have been such an incredible ghost in her own right, without any kind of connection to any other ghost. She could have just been her own entity, because whatever she needs to do to fit the moment, she will meet it head on. And everything that she does, like I'm watching her work and I'm just like, you are giving me like a Glenn Close level of melodrama, like just as connected, but also just as theatrical. And I love her. I wish I loved the character.
Especially if there was more on paper for her to like, because she does what she can with what is written in crayon. If it had been typed out, You know what I mean? It could have been so much more.
Right.
I'll never forget I think it's one of the bonus features where they're interviewing the makeup designer for the movie.
Oh, okay.
And she was saying like the original intention was to have like a ghoulish old lady.
Mm.
But Danielle Basutti like nailed her audition, and they're like, well, we're gonna cast her, and they're like, well, she's not old and she's not ugly, and like
Mm-mm.
so they kind of went with a different approach, like a more classic but like that's how good she is at like she comes in and makes you rewrite the villain. You know,
yes, but they
but
should have
also that
writing.
but I love that look of like her ghost is not ghoulish.
Yes, I agree.
And I love that they carried over the old kind of traditional theater. There's a little more detail to it, but still just foundation and some, you know.
Yes, I agree.
Cartoonish
yes
highlights in her hair.
This wave, this 30s kind of like wave in her. Oh, like I'm getting Fay Ray. Oh, it's gorgeous.
When Renee is in like the living room and then she just kind of jumps in front of her. I forget the line. She says it like twice. Once in the sort of red door flashback, but she says it to Renee right before she hits her.
Don't you dare.
Don't you dare. It reminded me of that first movie where she's not necessarily, she's reliving something. It's that thing in the further where like they're trapped in a memory and they don't really understand. I don't think it's some choice. It's just like a weird flashback and here you are. That sort of thing where I don't get to understand it and it's complicated and not part of my brainwave. That's scary to me when ghosts are operating on a level that I don't get to understand.
Yeah.
So good job with that little beat and they do such a great job. I do like the darkening of her eyes and like the darkening of her mouth. Like it's very effective because she goes from being very beautiful to very like ugh. And it's
terrifying.
Very, very simple tricks.
Well, again, her energy is also really disturbing because it's so invasive and so aggressive.
Yes, and melodramatic. And
yes, but the only kind of like problem I have with again, well, not the only problem. I obviously have a lot of problems with how the character was handled by and large by all the other hands that went in, basically like the writing and kind of like the filmmaking. but another thing that bothered me was the way she's established, like kind of like sitting in the parlor room and standing up and just kind of drifting out. I don't have a problem with it, but I wasn't scared of it, and I was like, why aren't I more scared of this moment? And I think I figured out why for me.
Okay, well, the first time I was very scared. I'm never scared anymore, but go on. Why?
Oh, okay. I think the reason I wasn't scared the first, I don't think, because I didn't think I was scared of that moment. I was definitely not scared this time. And the reason I nailed for myself was everything about it felt generic, like a ghost, and it's like the movie has already set the bar. The first movie set the bar so high by giving each ghost a distinct, again, I'm going to keep, my word is energy tonight, but a distinct energy and just a distinct kind of like, you use very particular colors from your palette to paint this character, and hers were just kind of like beige initially for me, as far as the way, because that character who's just kind of drifting from room to room has nothing in common with the character who, don't you dare, and all that.
That's why I liked it, is because there's this sort of weird humanity, but it's confused.
Yeah.
And that confusion where I can't help it make sense of anything.
Okay.
Kind of bothers me. And the fact that it swings between those two is something where I can't help, I can't control, and I don't know what mood it's going to fucking be in. That, to me, that worked. But what worked more, though, is I just appreciate the fact that, like, it's not some Bagul, it's not some black-haired demon with horns. It was just like, no, it's a lady in white. And the fact that it's just so simple. And just like in that first movie, so, like, it's just a guy in a leather jacket. It's just a little boy in an old-timey outfit. Like, you could tell, like, with her hairstyle, like, she's not of this era. It's an elegant little lady in white. If they did the same thing over and over and over again, it would become less effective. But that first time where I don't know who she is, but there's just like a lady walking down the hall, I don't like that at all. And the fact that she's not so traditionally ghoulish, that she does resemble a human, just like that to me is more disturbing. Like, why is there a quiet person in my house?
But that's
like that.
And see, that should have me shaking in my boots. Like, in theory, if we were having a movie weekend and it got really, really late, and we were about to like turn in, and you started talking about like ladies walking down the hall. You know, like
Right.
you've mentioned Insidious, like the first movie, before I've had to go to bed, you know, both during movie weekends and even when we do these and it goes late into the night and then I have to go to bed. I'm like, fuck you for mentioning Insidious. And that can get to me. There's something about the way the character doesn't really disturb the air, and the fact I think I understand what you're saying about it kind of like being this polar thing that they're playing with, like, or two extremes, like, you know, extremely quiet and extremely loud and etc. But for me, the introduction felt a little basic, and then once we got into the actual performance and I could actually see what she was bringing, like why they hired her, then I felt like I had something to watch. And so I appreciaed that. But there were also like little things sprinkled throughout that I'll just mention because they bothered me. Yeah.
Is it about her? Because I was about.
Oh, if you want to keep talking about her, then go ahead.
Yeah, because we wanted to praise the Danielle Basutti for a bit.
Yes.
But the thing that I don't get is that Carl, Specs, and Tucker and Lorraine go to Elise's house and they think they're talking to her because they're trying to figure out what is happening. Yeah. And it leads them to the hospital.
Yeah.
The hospital, they get the records of the house because she recognizes this room that belonged to, we go here, we go there, we go there. We go to the records room, we find his address, we go to the house.
Yeah.
So that we can learn that the Bride in Black was really this serial killer. And then, you know, with the drop of the dice, find out that, you know, I'm not Elise. What is the point of her giving them all this information? You're essentially, they want to find this information. And then you gave it to them. Like, wouldn't you, in theory, want them to not know and have less information, be less informed, and direct them elsewhere? Because it seems like Elise is helping you. And we're on this journey where they are uncovering facts. And then it's revealed, it was really her. But she gave you all the facts.
Yeah.
You're a bad ghost, right? Because, like, why are you helping them? And why are you acting like, ooh, spooky dice, I'm not Elise? Like,
yeah.
Was this one big long con to get them so that you could drop a chandelier?
She's the Bond villain equivalent of of a ghost. It's like, here's all the details you need to know about me, and now you die. Oops. Oh, foiled again. Curses.
Yeah, I don't understand why she did all that.
No.
Because from her point of view, she shouldn't be doing any of it.
Yeah.
Especially if she wants her son to succeed, like, send them to a different house, misdirect them, don't tell them anything. What?
Yeah.
Or, you know, you misdirect them to like their doom, but instead, like, you know, they get all the information they need. And
yeah. And on another note, but along the same lines of like what you're speaking of, I really actually, and this is a good thing, I actually really appreciated the inclination. It felt like something was happening that actually made sense as far as the characters were concerned. When Lorraine reached out to Specs and Tucker, and then they reach out to Carl, and then Carl decides it's time to reach out to Elise. That all seemed timed very well as it was happening. And then the reaching out to Elise and the going into the hospital and everything like that it really started to feel like vamping.
It goes on and on and on.
Because I forgot
and
I forgot about the twist. I forgot that, like, oh, it's not Elise.
I always remember the twist.
No, I forgot because, you know.
But then it's so pointless because there's no actual twist that occurs.
No, it's just kind of like, and now the chandelier.
Yeah,
it's great. You failed.
I will say, yeah, I appreciate the fact that oh God, my brain, I said her name like 100 times. Barbara Hershey gets more like, hey, we had a Barbara Hershey in the last movie. What if we gave her more to do? That's a good instinct.
Yeah.
Giving her and Carl and Tucker and Specs something to do.
Yeah.
Cool. But it really does feel like a side quest. It really feels like pulling taffy. I appreciate the fact that for the most part, this doesn't seem to be a repeat of the first movie. Like their whole they're uncovering facts. Like structure wise, we spend the first movie not understanding what's happening in the house and then understanding what's happening in the house. Whereas in this movie, we know that ghosts happened. We spend half of the time with other characters uncovering a mystery. It's structurally not the same movie. It really isn't. So I appreciate the attempt to do that.
Okay,
but what they came up with.
yes.
What they came up with, and to ultimately just have it be also the fact that I don't know. Did you feel this way? Where like it? Okay, in my memory of this movie, they only go to one place, and I realized while watching this, I'm like, oh, you're going to the hospital, and then you leave the hospital and go to this house. Because they look the fucking same. Like the art direction. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the same location and we just filmed in this hallway in this room and then went over here because it's the same exact looking space.
Yeah, and not only that, like, I mean, they had the exact same kind of like energy. They're both shot the same way. They're both going through them with these fucking flashlights and lamps and shit. The same like cobwebs hanging. Yes, exactly.
I forgot that they were two separate locations.
Yeah, so did I. But even when they were running, I think Tucker and Specs had to race to maybe it was after the chandelier fell. They had to race to Carl and Lorraine's aid at one point, and I even noticed that they ran through some beaded curtains, and for a second I was like, wait, are we at Elise's house? Because Elise had those beaded curtains too. Whoever was doing the set dressing and whoever was in charge of like, we have to shoot these locations differently so that I don't ever confuse those two houses from the first movie with each other. They're very, very, we talked about it. They're both very, very different houses, and the way they're shot is like, it establishes like, like one is 2 stories, one is one, and one, but also in light of what we're talking about as far as like giving Lorraine more to do, I do appreciate the thought. Barbara Hershey has to utter some of the shittiest lines though. Like one of the ones that she says that just had me rolling my eyes when they walked into the hospital and they were like talking about like, wow, it's abandoned. She says, now only the ghosts are left. And I'm just like, well, okay. Here in Our Lady of Angles, sure, why not? But
one little thing that I really, really appreciated though, so much is when they're at the hospital and they flash back to the 80s. And they're and Parker Crane's in the room. Parker Crane's nurse has the most 80s-tastic hair. Do you know how many movies I see where they flash back and like the hairstyles are fucking wrong?
Yeah.
She had this like this 80s volume, and I'm like,
that's nice.
Whoever was on hair and makeup for that was fucking great.
Well, even as far
that.
Even as far as like continuity for like young Lorraine and young Elise, like the hair looked like Elise's hair, looked like it could be Lorraine's hair. So whoever was on hair for this movie, we love you.
Jocelyn Donahue's young Lorraine hair was perfect. And props to Jocelyn Donahue, by the way, who's fucking magnificent in fucking House of the Devil. I love seeing her show up in things. So
and I thought she did a good job. I thought she gave good Barbara Hershey too. And still managed to just kind of do her own thing. I didn't feel like I was watching an impression. It was a great balance. That said, also you were talking about the flashback. One of the things that actually I think works for this movie is something that usually doesn't work. That's a gimmick, and it's a jump scare, Parker Crane's jump scare, where where little Josh is like walking up to him, and we just kind of like we see him, we go away from him, then when we come back, there he is, and I'm getting like Alice waking up in Dream Child, and there's Robert Englund, and I'm just kind of like, and because he's really there, it's not a fake out. Again, we get a jump scare that actually works. That's a return to kind of like the franchise feel that I like.
And not just a good jump scare, but it's also the thing that if you were a child, at least Eddie, if I was a child,
I know.
Man's like, fuck all the way off.
And that was probably the closest that character got, even though again it was very intense and very animated. There was something about, again, the question of what, not whether you're going to, not whether you mean me harm, but what kind of harm are you going to inflict upon me? Like, what are you going to do once you get a hold of me? And there was some, so at least it was semi-familiar, even though I don't applaud, the idea of like, okay, let's make this iconic ghost from our first movie. Let's everybody thought it was a woman, but it was played by a man, so let's make a man. And also let's have him be alive. Let's go into one of his flashbacks and expose even more of his backstory, because surely that'll make him scarier. Also another thing, like I felt like when they're in the hospital and they, oh wait, no, see, I thought they were in the hospital, but I think they were in the house,
right? Because they look too much alike.
Because they were even in little Parker's or little Marilyn's bedroom. And see, that's when my skin started crawling. Not for the reason they intended it to, but because I knew what they were intending. I felt like I knew what they were intending, just kind of like, this is Parker's room, but there's a dollhouse and dolls in a tea set. This isn't a boy's room. I mean, it was so like, I mean, it's 2013, fuckers. Like, come on.
Although I do respect Tucker for being like, what? I had a dollhouse.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, you had a dollhouse. Look at you, you big old man with a beard.
Yeah, but you know what?
You can have dollhouses.
But you know what pisses me off is
played as a joke.
I know, but what also negates that moment, even as me seeing it, is kind of like, well, there's that. Is that at another point, I think it's when they're listening to Carl in the house. And I don't remember what the line is that Specs has, but he's like supportive of Tucker in that particular moment. And he puts his hand, I think it's on his leg, on Tucker's leg. And Tucker just has this kind of, like, hey man, what the fuck? Like, oh no, we're men, we don't touch each other, bro. And I'm just kind of like, oh God. And I think that was in there like to be funny. And I was just kind of like, on top of all of the alleged and perceivable transphobia, now we've got just good old-fashioned homophobia too. Great. Makes me feel right at home. Thank you, James Wan and Leigh Whannell. But the first thing I thought, because I forgot about the whole, as we're seeing little Parker Crane's room and everything, and we just see kind of like the little presence in the blonde hair with the pigtails sitting on the bed. I forgot about that too. I forgot that was going to be a little baby boy Parker Crane in drag. And I thought it was Annabelle for a second.
I totally get that.
And this is saying something. I would have preferred Annabelle. I really would have. And I really don't care for those movies either. I mean, I
care for one of them.
Creation was good. But
yeah, dude.
Yeah. But beyond that. Yes.
There is a beat there that I like.
Yeah.
I wish the beat was supported by, stronger rest of the scene and a stronger movie. But when we just see like the back of a little girl.
Yeah.
And first of all, I think it's the camera that Tucker's carrying sees it. But I think she says like, you better go or she's gonna make me kill you. I'm like, right. That's a sentence I don't want to fucking hear from a little kid sitting on a bed. So the fact that they are like, they just get the fuck out of the room. I'm like, that is the right fucking response to that. Get the fuck out of the room. That was a really good beat. In fact, that whole scene, there's two scenes that work on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that you mentioned, because technically there's three with the Parker Crane close-up.
Oh, okay.
And they work on me because James Wan still in this movie, when it's not dealing with all this exposition, still knows how to compose a scene, and he and his DP really know how to frame things and set them up. I mean, even just Renee in the, when she walks by and you see, Parker Crane's mom, it's not the same kind of room silence where it's not the room tone that I like, but it's still the fact that they do let scenes play out. Maybe the story's momentum, but some of the scare scenes aren't as zippy, and they still have that moment where we're going to let the scene breathe for a minute. So you don't know, we're going to keep it wide. So you're kind of wondering where in this room oh my God, she's on the couch.
Yeah.
She gets, we move through. He's really good at framing things. It's same thing with Josh looking at the machine. Like, it's a close up. He's a kid. He's curious. He knows when to exercise a close up for an effective jump scare. He knows how long to stay wide. Like, and to me, the scene with little Crane slash Marilyn, whatever.
Parker. Parker
Parker
slash
slash
Marilyn.
Marilyn.
Yeah.
That scene
Yeah.
and its timing really worked for me. But then the very next scene is my favorite part of the whole movie. Where fucking Dalton hears the fucking tin can.
Oh, okay.
And he gets up. And again, this is just basic. Like the first movie I understood, like, I don't know, being kind of alone in an empty house can be scary. Just really basic things.
Sure.
And this one had a really basic thing of like, you're a little kid in a bed and you heard a noise. And what if, like, oh God, it's the closet. What the fuck is in the closet? And that anticipation. Like, for honestly, Eddie, for about a minute or two, like the movie had me again. Because Dalton in the bed in the closet, I'm like, when? And then the fucking girl comes out. Like, and even then, I like the fact that it was like a confused ghost trapped in a moment again and not just like, oh, I'm going to get you. But like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But fucking, yeah, the tin can and Dalton in the closet. 2 minutes. Really great stuff.
Nice.
Really well framed. Really well directed. Staged, blocked.
Okay.
More of that, please.
I didn't have as strong a reaction as you did to it. I did notice, like, okay, we've got another gimmick, a new gimmick for like the, you know, that
it's a lot of gimmicks in this movie.
Well, kind of like the telephone for Poltergeist 2 versus like, you know, the television in the first movie, like where we don't really have any equivalent, like, or well, I guess maybe the red door up in the attic, maybe for Dalton, or just the whole idea of him astrally projecting, or at all, just, you know, the means he has of making contact with the beings in the further, as opposed to in this movie, now there's a tin can and you're sharing it with your brother, and there's a safety there, there's a playfulness, there's even a dismissal because he doesn't want to do it. And then in the middle of the night, you start to hear a voice, and only thing that pulled me out of it is, number one, everything that preceded it, I was just kind of like over it, and I was just kind of like, what are you doing? Well, that feels basic. Just because, again, maybe I'm too close. I've just watched like the Scream movies again recently, so I'm used to hearing a whispery voice go, I'm not Randy, or, you know, whatever. So when he's just like, I'm not Foster, I'm like, seen it, taped it.
Wow.
And again, I agree with you. The different energy of the girl coming out of the closet, in theory, it's refreshing. It's not like the ooky spooky basic kind of thing, but it didn't, and while it didn't scare me, I really could have used a good scare at that moment. But I even wish we could have maybe showcased a little more either fear from her or a little more mania, or just an emotion, more of a raw emotionality to it. Like, give her some more takes, guys.
Well, I got more of the buildup and less of her reveal.
Sure. Okay, I that's fair.
I mean, who hasn't been a kid, especially in a new house? And if the closet door's open, you're like, oh fuck, what the? Yeah. No, it works.
I only have a few more kind of like thumbs downs, and then I can start talking about the things I really, really like.
I'm almost done with my notes.
Oh, good. Okay. So let me say, I'll say this one. No, I don't need to say that one. Okay. So we're in the house and we discover all the dead bodies underneath like the soiled sheets and everything like that. All it felt like to me was a particular room you'd walk through in a Horror Nights maze.
Absolutely.
It just felt like they're setting it up. And they did. They had an Insidious 2 maze that I did not go through. I'm sure that you walk through like the center of, you know, I've seen it before in other mazes where you walk through the center aisle and there's pews on either side of you. And there's, you know, who's a mannequin and who isn't. And then something reaches for you. And I could feel that coming a mile away. And then also, I didn't understand logistically why Tucker needed to lift the sheets to investigate what's under here when you can see fingernails and hands on laps, and you know, you can see basically from, let's say, maybe the forearm down and the thigh down.
Right.
Do you really need to investigate?
Well, that, first of all, wouldn't that whole room already reek?
That's another thing. Again, like, yes, James Wan can achieve mastery, but with this particular moment, I was like, if I'm walking into a room full of dead people, first and foremost, the thing that I should be doing as an audience member is smelling the room. So give me the characters walking in going, you know?
Yes.
It has to have, it has the events have to, or the micro events, you know, have to occur within a natural progression that kind of put me in the footsteps of that person who was walking in that room. And especially because it is interactive, I can tell you want me to be in that room, and you're even doing POV shots looking down on the hands in the laps, and then you get some doofus, and granted his character is a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern-esque character, but for the love of God, it just didn't make any sense to me, and it pulled me right out of it. And I didn't gag. I was just kind of watching the actor going, he's working really hard. And then
before you go on, I just want to say that not only did it feel like a Universal haunted maze, but that also, to me, that's exacerbated by the crisp digital photography.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when it feels like it's operating that kind of extra smooth frame rate, it makes the sets feel like sets.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen The Hobbit at 60 frames, but like all the forests, like you feel like you're in a soundstage. And this really that added to the fact that I'm like, oh, this is all artificial. This feels like set dressing. And I can't help but wonder if you didn't shoot it digitally or had, no offense, if you had shot it better.
No,
because there is like good digital photography out there.
Yeah.
But
no, and I also
felt like video.
Yeah. So also, I mean, it felt like a concept first and foremost. Like I feel like I could read it on the page, but like I was reading it to like just kind of like go over it, not like I was immersed in it. And also, it felt we've talked about this with the Texas Chainsaw franchise. It felt dressed. It didn't feel like, oh my God, we're walking into like a den of secrecy and disgust and you know, like inhuman. Unimaginable things happened to these people in this house, possibly in this room, and now they're all on display, and I can smell it. There are flies. There are no. I mean, were there flies buzzing? There would have been, and I just if there's cobwebs,
it feels like the idea of that, and not that.
And that's why it feels like a maze, as opposed to like the maze is the idea and everything's working for you. And sometimes mazes even do incorporate smell, and it's gross. But I love it, again, like OG Texas Chainsaw. Whenever I'm in that house, I am going, ugh. When I'm watching the remake, I'm going like, look at the clean lines. Look at the shafts of light coming through that window. You know, like, ooh, that's a lot of attention to detail. That is, oh, braces on teeth. That's disturbing. You know, like I'm not. Anyway, I've said it before. Only other thing, I think, and then we can talk about. So for Elise, not to reference a terrible Lindsay Lohan movie, but you know who killed you.
Fuck yeah. I know who killed me. Yeah,
she knows who killed her.
Yeah.
So why the fuck does it take her so fucking long to come back? This again, all of the
Eddie,
best.
The further doesn't operate on linear time.
I don't like that in order to get the movie that I wanted, it took them so fucking long. It took us so fucking long to finally get to actual Josh, and it took us even longer to get to actual Elise. Because I was wondering, I remember the first time I saw the movie, I thought maybe we're not going to get her. Like maybe she's in heaven or the afterlife or whatever you want to call it.
Third name credited.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, she gets third billing.
And she's barely, oh, that was another thing I wanted to address. Like, okay, thank you for reminding me, because it's kind of a praise, but it's not. The two, because I made that comment earlier about like all the women characters and how they're basically kind of left defenseless. That is not true of Elise. So I retract my all part, my every woman part of that sentence. And also, arguably, I'd say that's not Mrs. Crane. They're the two possibly strongest characters. I mean, like, you know, power. They both got some power behind them. And even that scene where Elise is in the room watching the young Parker ghost get, you know, berated and abused by Mrs. Crane ghost, and then they see each other, and it's almost like this standoff because Lin Shaye is like shaking with that intensity, and like her eyes are welling up with just this, I know who you are. And then the aggression just comes at her. And it's such a beautiful idea to just see these two women just, you know, I just want to watch the energy reverberate off of each other and everything like that. And but so the thing that pisses me off is it took us so long to finally get, I don't know what she was waiting for. I love that she gets the hero's entrance, as it were, like,
well,
be gone, go to hell.
She's waiting for the hero's entrance because that's when the movie wants her to.
But I really could have used her earlier, and like I said, she would have been one of the first people. I mean, I understand we can't see her right at the top, but if she could have just, I mean, at least within the first half hour of the movie, like let's see immediately how trapped or how lost or how distant Josh, adult Josh, real Josh is in the further, and then make his quest for like however many pages, however many minutes about finding Elise, because she's the only one who can tell him how to get back into his body, because maybe he can, again, sets up such incredible scares, because he can meet, and we'll get there when I talk about the strengths, but he can meet even more spirits that are scary in the further. That's some of the strongest I mean, everything's strong about the first movie for me, but some of the strongest moments are just like encountering all the different energies of these ghosts. And if he's just kind of like traveling, trying to attract Elise's energy and just kind of like be in the same space with her, and he just keeps almost like missing the mark or being like, God, I don't know why I'm here. And then we can find out finally when he meets her, like, why was I drawn to this place? Why was I drawn to that place? That's the kind of explanation I would like, maybe about like how maybe a little bit more about the logistics about how the further works now that she's in the afterlife.
Because the rules, even in the first movie, are vague, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it becomes a case of like, oh, mommy, I'm going to fall asleep and I'll go get dad. And then he just falls asleep and goes get dad. The distance of how far you had to go is sort of gone. Same thing with, oh, maybe we're asking the wrong Josh. And apparently we can just go to the 80s that easily. Like if the script needs us to, apparently we can just will ourselves to go wherever. Forget the long fog and the calling out and searching and searching. It's just everything kind of zips along.
Well, because that's also another thing. It's just like that moment. I remember the first time I saw it, the dread I felt when we finally got to further adult Josh talking to boy Josh in the 80s, and we finally get to see him point to the doorway, and it opens and he has to go through that doorway. And I remember thinking, I know I would have to just not think about it. I would have to literally clear my mind and pretend I'm someone else to get me through that door because hell's waiting for me through that door, and all of the possibilities in the world just kind of like start, your mind starts to kind of expand and imagine like, what's he gonna find? And what he found was, a lot of really, really problematic situations. But let me talk about the strengths now. Let me go back and just kind of see everything I didn't already cross out. Okay, got it. So one thing that I really, really like is when we're in the further, as far as continuity is concerned, I like that screaming is still bad in the further. Like literally Carl starts calling out. I think he's calling out for Elise. And you start to hear like, or whatever. And Josh is just like, don't do that. And it, again, I'm like, right. Because when you call out in the further, you attract, the spirits, like the dead, like they'll be drawn to you. I mean, even though we think you're dead right now, we know Josh is alive and we don't want him to get, mobbed. So that, it was such a tiny thing, but I really appreciated it. And then, okay, talking about encountering other ghosts, the he's got your baby guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that Josh couldn't see him, but Carl could.
Yeah, which the first time I saw that movie, I'm like, oh, what a good effect. Sorry, it's a good effective thing the first time.
Oh.
But 4 viewings later, I'm like, wait, why can't Josh see him? Wait, why can Carl see him and Josh can't? Like, huh? They're both in the further. This hasn't been a thing yet.
Maybe it's a different,
I mean, that only occurred to me this time on 4th viewing. Like,
okay. Why? The only thing that made me, the reason why it worked on me is because, yes, why? But also, like, it's one of those things that happens and it's like, well, if that's the rule, if you can be in the further and someone with you can be cognizant of some things that are going on and you can't, fuck, then like what frequency do we have to be on? Because it also explains.
That's a good point. because
Yeah.
again, one of the things I liked about The Further last time is how like there aren't rules. So
Yeah.
like I don't get it. And that's
Yeah.
weird to me.
And also, Carl does kind of fall away a little bit when we go into another huge strength for me with this movie, which is incorporating the first movie back in with the alarm and with, I mean, right, what immediately follows the "he's got your baby" guy. Um, but I noticed that Carl wasn't with him for a while, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's Carl. So I'm like, did Carl just kind of drift off and then just kind of like, oh, I'm back, thank God. You know, who knows what happened to Carl? But I just wrote, this is good, revisiting what happened in the first movie. But it wasn't just because I mean, I love the first movie, but it wasn't just because they were revisiting the first movie. It was because literally I started to talk about this in our first movie discussion. It was effective the first time when we didn't know what the hell was going on. We just thought something was fucking with them and trying to scare them and maybe trying to break it. We don't know. Something about putting it in a context. This is a perfect example of putting something in context and blowing my mind and also making me scared, because I am rooting for Callie, the little baby who God knows what she has absorbed thus far in this family, being exposed to spirit after spirit after spirit, just kind of like looming over her and meaning her harm and finally slapping her across the face. And like, I was so relieved. I was relieved the way Renee was relieved when she went up back to the, you know, when she woke up after her slap and went back up to the stairs, and there was Callie and she was just mama, you know, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, oh thank God. And I don't usually worry, you know, about babies, but I worry about Callie. I worry about her poor little sensory apparatus just being barraged. And and the fact that, like, again, like, this other spirit is kind of on a frequency where he knows that that's his baby, if he does, because I think he does, but how? And it's all very, again, very dreamlike and weird, and much closer to what I find that unsettles me and can scare me. That kind of thing. I don't even necessarily need to be scared, even though the film franchise can achieve my fear. But even if it's just kind of weird and dreamy, because I've had weird dreams that don't make any sense. And when somebody nails that too, that energy, we're just kind of like, what the fuck where am I? What does this mean? Why are you saying that? Stop pushing cheese in my face. You know, like, whatever is happening that doesn't make any sense. And then, I don't know. I just
so
really
basically
appreciate it.
David Lynch movies.
Yeah. Oh, I got to watch Inland Empire again. Anyway, I got to say, all my criticism for the climax, Patrick Wilson still made me cry when he came back and he was hugging Dalton. And he's just kind of like, you're back. And he's just like, yeah, I'm back because of you, buddy. And I'm just like, oh my God. And also, you know, like, because he's sincerely glad to be back. Patrick Wilson is just so fucking good.
Yeah. I'm not 100% with the, like, it's me. But when he's with his son, though, I'm like, okay, I'm buying all this.
Yeah.
It's not so much his work. It's just like the beat of that. Either I could have gotten more of her not believing him, or just don't.
Yeah. Those are
but him and Dalton are great.
Yeah, those are among the strongest things that affected me this time. But by far the strongest thing that affected me this time was the ending, the little epilogue that we go to. Do you have anything else to say before I go into, like, the closure?
Yeah, because one of the things that worked for me, that's not the ending, is one scene in particular with Josh that really works for me.
Okay.
Is when Carl comes over before the fight ensues.
Oh.
But when, you know, Tucker and Specs are outside in the van, listening. And Josh goes to get him some water, I think.
Yeah.
But he comes back with this shit-eating kind of grin and his arm behind his back. And when he was like, what do you got behind your back? There's like, why don't you ask your dice? Everything about his smile, his arrogance, his mean sort of, he's not quite doing this, but he wants to, and he's doing it behind that face. Yeah, why don't you go ask your dice what's behind my back? And it's not the same kind of thing where in The Further, I don't like creepy smiling ghosts. This is a different kind of smile where it's clearly malevolent.
Yeah.
But he's still like like if I was Carl, I'd be like, you're clearly like not fucking Josh right now. But they're both
Yeah.
sort of playing. It's actually the fact that Carl's like, even says like, he's referring to, she said something,
Yes.
and you could tell like he meant his mother,
Mm-hmm.
but Josh thinks he's talking about Renee,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything about that scene, everything about his performance, because Josh in scary mode later, with all
Yeah.
of his little latex wrinkles and being, Jack Torrance, does nothing
Mm-hmm.
for me.
No.
If I got more of that like unnerving, arrogant, so fake about being friendly that you're being shitty,
Yeah.
that was fucking great. I
Yeah.
really liked the fuck out of that scene. I
And
like him in particular. He
yeah.
shines.
Oh, Patrick Wilson, dear God. Yeah.
Prior to that, it's all just like, no, we just ignore the ghosts, whatever. And then after that, it's all like latex and but that one fucking scene, I could have had so much more of that, Josh.
I'm glad you brought that up because that actually brings me to another strength that I don't even remember, but I'm glad because you reminded me also. Technically, just like they do a different kind of makeup on him because he's sickly then,
He is
but
in
he's
makeup
not.
in that scene, but it's not
Yes.
the later makeup.
No.
I
It's
like that
not.
stage of his
I
look
know it's
paired with his performance.
It just kind of brings out like the narrowness in his face, and also just kind of when he smiles, there's something skeletal about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
a good use of his teeth and smile. Yeah.
yes, it's very imposing. His stillness is perfection. Like it's just cinematic. Like it's like a Western. It's a standoff.
I don't want to call it an alpha energy so much as like a faux alpha energy. But I remember, maybe this is getting too personal, but like when you're a kid and you're kind of a kid who's like, not at all tough and likes theater and shit, and you're kind of maybe in the presence of like a really shitty, like aggro alpha kind of adult, and like they don't understand like your whole thing, and there's just like that like kind of shitty kind of smile to like, I looked at him and I'm like, oh man, I've been around a few dads like you.
Yeah.
Like you're not saying everything you want to say, but I know you don't like me. And in that moment, Josh is like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Just waiting.
It's actually I'm so glad we're like centering on like Patrick Wilson's performance.
It's a mean energy.
Yeah,
and that to me is almost more scary than just spooky.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's and it's also incredibly like dimensional. Like it's totally believable. Like it's tense as fuck. And if you were standing across from it, you wouldn't know what the fuck to do, because even if you wrestle the knife out of his hand, because he's got a weapon of some sort.
But you're both lying and you don't want to give up that.
No.
And when
but
is
also
this fucking hammer gonna drop?
Yeah, it's the inevitable. It's just kind of like postponing the inevitable in real time, and it's
Juan's direction. Again, there are scenes that really, and if I had, because first of all, this is so much more interesting and not scary, but more unnerving than a guy talking to his mom about how he doesn't want to kill these people. If I had more of this, and let's say every once in a while someone was getting too close to getting to the truth, and then let's say Lorraine got too close and then all of a sudden the next day, like, where's Lorraine? Like, oh, she went to go do something. And you're like, no, Lorraine's fucking gone. And now Carl, and we had more of this two-faced guy who's putting on one side for his wife, but when someone gets too close, and like, heaven forbid, like if the kids start figuring it out, now I'm scared because they're gonna meet that guy. Like that would have been so much cooler.
Yeah, I don't
more
want
of this scene.
Yeah, I don't want them to remake the first movie. I just want it to feel like, I've said this before, a natural progression, and for these people to be the people who I left at the end of the first movie and tell a story that makes sense, that's going to follow that. And I got pieces of it here and there. But what I'm really, really glad you brought up that scene, because it makes me think about James Wan's strengths even within this movie are the moments that are more playful as a filmmaker, that are just more about like, okay, so how are we going to establish tension here? How are we going to disturb the air here? How are we going to move through a space here and get from A to B? Where they're, just like, how are we going to put the audience in a situation? And that is one of the ultimate strengths of the first movie. And that's the only thing that I think I mean when I kind of like reference it, is that I wish I could have gotten more of that with this movie, more moments that because you kind of hit it on the head. The parts, the components of it, I agree. Really, really good filmmaking, incredible acting, and the way they depicted it, the way it affected me. I felt the tension in the room. The problem was I wasn't with the story overall at that point, and I did not like the fact that I was stuck with this spirit, because this spirit is the woman who was standing in the window who gave me nightmares, or I couldn't even sleep the first night that I saw the first movie. And now I don't like them being the same person. This moment should have happened independent of all of that. This could have just been another spirit, even though I will say the stillness is a very, very solid continuous trait with that character. So
you're saying this could have been a different spirit, not that guy. But I will say that it's actually the idea at the end of the first movie of it winning and entering Josh's body. This is the first time I felt the payoff of that. Of like, oh, this is what could happen. This is what you could get, and it's bad, and that's so much better than him talking to himself in the bathroom.
Yeah, but I think I had too much exposure to too many other things that were that I was just kind of like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. That by the time I got to that, I was just like, I don't like this.
And it's isolated, it's effective. I understand the bigger story. It could, but again, when you look at what are the tools that we have and the budget that we have to try to scare our audience, and you know what, rocking chairs rocking by themselves and like a room full of like dead mannequins, with some drapes over them. Turns out, no, you just need a really good actor. Put the camera on them, because that was a way more effective tool at getting to me than some of the other like spook house things that happened in this movie.
Yeah, the immersive quality, when it's there, when it's effective. It's unlike anything else, and unfortunately, it's not consistent. But
it's not. I wish it had been.
Yeah, me
either
too.
more consistent, but also not just with the movie, but more of this. Because I think one of the other reasons why it gets to me is that Patrick Wilson gets cast a lot, not all the time, as like a very kind of like vanilla, basic guy. And even in this franchise, he is. And the fact that this is the first time we really get to see him do something to it. It's a perversion of what we come to expect from him, because like his character in all the Conjuring movies are also like, gee golly, I'm a guy.
Okay, children, gather around. I'm going to serenade you.
And even as haunted as he is about some of his hangups in The Watchmen, like again, he plays the very, like he plays a lot of Leonardo, a lot of Cyclops, a lot of like the guy, and some of the people, not all the time. Fucking hard candy. There's some, Aquaman. He gets, but I'm just saying, there's a large handful of movies that is something that they cast him for, and that he's good at.
Sure.
And to see within this movie, to see it get wrinkled and fucked up a bit.
Yeah, I'll tangent.
That was your baseline.
I'll tangent for a second, even though it's connected to what you're saying. So it's not really a tangent, but it's not about Insidious. And it's not about his movies either. But my first exposure ever to Patrick Wilson was on stage. He was playing Billy Bigelow in a revival of Carousel in the 90s. And and it was just here in LA. It was on tour. He hadn't, I don't think he'd been on Broadway yet. And he was amazing. I obviously had an impression. I still remember that I saw him, and that was my first exposure. And I learned the name Patrick Wilson. And I was like, I'm going to look for you because you're fucking amazing. And for people who don't know, he plays a guy who beats his wife and who ultimately, spoilers, kills himself because he tries to commit a crime, fails miserably, doesn't see a way out, so he just kind of takes himself out. And then he, in the afterlife, very Insidious.
Actually.
He goes into the further.
Holy shit.
and he has to make reparations with his offspring because his daughter is going, oh my God, it really is like Insidious, because his daughter is going through something similar to what he went through when he was young that made him think he had to be big and tough. So he has to essentially kind of appear to her like as if he's like moving from the further into our dimension, and basically kind of like give her, you know, understanding and impart it. And I won't tell you whether he succeeds or not. Just watch the musical. It's good.
It's quite good.
Yeah, but I know that on the heels of that, it's interesting what you're talking about him, you know, being cast as with the vanilla guy and everything like that. The thing that put him on a lot of people's radar was he did on Broadway, finally, when he kind of like got into the zeitgeist. I don't remember if it was before or after the Full Monty, but he did Oklahoma. And there he is just coming out on stage with the big bravado and just the, oh, what a beautiful morning, with the old timey gestures and everything. I didn't see it, but, and I'm sure he was great, but there's not really much room to delve deep into that character, you know? So I feel like.
Compared to Carousel, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like people, I don't even remember the name of the character in Oklahoma, but people may
Curly
expect, is it? I don't remember. Sure. Yeah. I don't like Oklahoma, so fuck it. But people may expect Oklahoma from him, whereas I first experienced Carousel, and I'm like, so anytime he does anything that deviates from any of that, or even if he does something that's similar, I'm just kind of like, there you are. Yeah, my guy. Yeah, love you.
See, my first, well, I mean, everything's kind of an improvement, because my first experience with him was Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, the movie.
Yeah, the movie.
He was really good in it.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, but as a movie, like that was my first, yeah. And then literally the very next movie I saw was Hard Candy, which was fucking phenomenal. Outstanding.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I fucking love him in that scene.
Yeah. Do you have anything else before we go to the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the idea of, like, I think we were talking before about how sometimes the pacing needs to get there. It feels like the movie either was done in post, or like we just need to wrap this up. I don't know. So like, I sort of get it, and I just don't get it though. This idea that like, well, where there's got to be a place where like Parker Crane's, like his memories live, like his place, and we see the red door. So just like how the red lipstick faced demon, they have like a, well, this is my, like, when I'm haunting someone, I have a spot that I go to and from. The door gets to be nearby, and the further, this is where I go enter and exit from. Sure, fine.
Yeah.
So if he's not consumed by the memory of his mother, then he can leave the body. So literally, Mother Mater is holding Josh by the throat in the further, and Elise just beats her a few times with the wooden horse, and then we just cut to the black, the woman in black just leaving, and I went, huh? I don't remember being this confused before, but huh?
Yeah.
And then we go from that very quick climax to a very quick, and we're gonna wipe your memories, the end. And I went, oh. And I mean, I get the idea that you don't just lose your power, but you lose some memory. And I want to go, how much are they gonna forget? Are they gonna? He's gonna remember his fucking wife, right? Or like, how? I don't know. It just wraps up too quick, and I don't know if you have an answer, but I just get very confused now by like, oh, we go to the further, and then we quickly beat up the ghost of his mom, and now he's free.
I mean,
I don't get it. And they actually show the bride leaving, and I don't know why.
Yeah. No, I should like all of that at all, and I don't, because it is a very, very, I agree with you. I think it's a very, very sloppy narrative, and I think it's just shoddily put together. It doesn't make sense. I don't feel like much thought was put into it. It was just kind of like, well, we have to get rid of her. So, and Elise is strong. So there you go.
Elise.
Yeah. and that's fine. I want to see Elise be strong. That's great. I'm not, but
had they written something about how, like, I'm not saying that I want more to be revealed about the bride in black.
Right.
But had they said something about like, well, in a weird way, she is trapped in his body because his mom has her hooks in him, but like if he can get away from her mom, then he can get away. Like, but they didn't really. I don't know. It's just sloppy. I don't really have a point other than I find it very confusing.
Well, let me just reiterate something I think I might have already said, but maybe I need to say it again just to satisfy myself. I think I said it in the first one. One thing I really, really loved was the introduction of like, yes, they're strong. So are you. Now that you discover your strength, let's see you two go toe to toe. Let's see you, fight. And sometimes it manifesting physically satisfies me because it's just about the aggression. It's just about you can't make me feel small. I'm gonna punch back kind of thing. So that can satisfy me. But because it's just so vague and because it doesn't, the logic of it doesn't make sense to me as far as the lore is concerned, and I don't even know what's happening there. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Thematically, like what figuratively, what is happening? Like even symbolically, what are you trying to tell me, movie? But I mean, and I wish there were many moments where I felt like the dead. Or the heavies of this script were pushing back so strongly, and I was just kind of like, where is the strength of the living? It is diminished over and over again, predominantly by the women, or not by the women, of the women, the women's strength. But everybody really, it's just kind of like everybody just continually kind of gets beat down more and more, and that could even be more threatening because it's like, oh my, I mean, sometimes all the character has to do in some franchises is say they've never been this strong before, I've never experienced anything like it, and that I'm just like, oh, okay, so this is new. you got to figure out something else. Can't just do what you did last time. And in this case, you really can't do what you did last time because Josh fucked it up. But I wish there could have been a little bit more. You talk about pulling taffy. I wish there could have been a little bit more push and push back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would have really loved.
Because that ending is the one time where they don't pull taffy. They just sort of go.
Yeah.
Which then gets us to apparently one of your favorite parts with
It's my favorite. It's my full-on favorite part.
First of all, let me just say before you talk about it, I just saw Studio 666 like a week ago.
Oh yeah.
Featuring Jenna Ortega.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw Scream like a million times in theaters featuring Jenna Ortega.
Yeah.
And then X is coming out like next week with Jenna Ortega. And I'm like, cool, you do horror movies, Jenna Ortega. And I'm watching fucking Insidious 2, and the little girl at the door is goddamn Jenna Ortega.
Yeah.
God bless her. I love when actors really like kind of stay in a certain wheelhouse. And I like it. I like that they got her young, like they hooked her in.
Yeah, right. Like the tobacco company.
Yeah,
like the tobacco industry.
She's like, I'm gonna have some more of these horror movies, please. Thank you. Let's do more.
Do more, please. Just keep doing them.
Yeah.
But and honestly, watching this epilogue, all I could think was like, oh my god, I've said this with other discussions we've had, but it's just kind of like, oh my god, I'm finally getting the movie I wanted. I really want, I still want to see what happens with Allison and her tormentor.
Well, that's my
I want that movie.
That's my problem with, no offense to 3 and 4 and whatever strengths and weaknesses they have, but
sure.
I remember being just like how with the end of Texas Chainsaw 3D, I want to see what happens next, and they're like, "Fuck you, prequel."
Mm-hmm.
You can't tease with the sound of the lipstick face demon. And they're like, oh, now we're going to do prequel. I'm like, oh, okay, but we're going to get back to this, right? And they're like, no, we're going to do another prequel. I'm like, we're going to get back to this, right? Because 2 ends so good. I want, like, you're saying you want like this, like I'm more irritated because I never got the payoff to this because it's too good of a setup.
You just making the noise made like, gave me goosebumps on my scalp. Like I felt my hair just kind of go, because this is the thing, just the few seconds with Elise getting recognized, at the door, and then she moves past them because she can, and she goes over to Allison, and who looks catatonic, and she's just, so kind to her, and I'm just kind of like, oh, here's my Elise, I missed you, and you're still, I don't mind if my heroines die in the movies, I mean, I will cry, I will be sad, I will miss them. But if they find some way in whatever comes after to keep doing their thing and embracing their power there, and maybe even getting more powerful, I am here for it. I love that she's still working, going house to house, wherever she senses something, just being like, we got to help. And I love that Tucker and Specs are still on board for it. And because it's even more ridiculous now that they have a ghost kind of medium.
It's kind of cute.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And I also, and just Lin Shaye. I really don't have any criticism for any of the performances in this movie. I feel like everybody, for what they're doing, whatever it is that they're doing it well. But my God, it's almost like I forgot. Sometimes you watch movies and you get kind of benumbed enough that you're just kind of like, I forgot how it feels like to watch a movie, or to be engaged in a movie. And I almost kind of forgot. And then Patrick Wilson made me cry, and I'm like, oh, I'm crying. And then
of course.
But then we get to this, and I just see her being really, really kind. And then I hear that it bothers me, because there's almost like something insectly about it. I don't know. It's just weird. Because also, what if it isn't the lipstick demon? What if it's, because the way she's looking at it, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck she's seeing, but just her.
Yeah, and it's all her.
And it just goes away. Insidious!
And the camera's showing the empty space where, like, I know it is, but I don't get to see it.
And I'm getting goosebumps on my arms. Like, I get the same. I got the same kind of unsettling unrest as I did at the end of the first movie. You have a completely different thing is happening, but just her at the end. Oh, it fucks me up. It fucks me up. It fucks me up. And this with oh my God, because Elise is scared, but also not just scared. A lot of things going on in Elise, but she is loaded. Like, oh. Let's go, bitch.
Right. And that's the other thing is I'm looking forward to, like, just like how at the end of Texas Chainsaw, I'm looking forward to, like, A Girl with My Pet Leatherface. Like, I'm looking forward to, like, this duo with a ghost, which makes it a trio, like, going forward. I want to see them.
And I don't understand twice now, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen 3 or 4, but I don't understand the inclination to reach into the past twice, maybe once, but twice, because it's like, well, we can't have a ghost, and it's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
You totally can, but James Wan. If you're watching, you can.
Yeah,
Leigh Whannell, if you're watching, you totally can.
I understand that, like, you want to have Elise as a character talking with your leads a lot, so we'll flash back. But no, I really want to see that movie.
All we got to do is get. Oh God, especially now, get Jen Ortega in The Further.
Oh yeah,
dude. I'm the ticket is sold. I'm buying all the tickets.
I mean, we know that there's an Insidious 5. I think we're getting it this year.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but
do we know what it's about?
Well, that's the thing. You don't know anything?
Don't tell me if you don't want to. I don't know.
No. Patrick Wilson's directing. It's his directorial debut.
Oh, I did hear about that. Yes.
Josh is back. I'm pretty sure Ty Simpkins is, like, the kids are older, but we're coming back.
Yeah.
We're coming back to that family. Okay. And I'm like, cool, because I liked them.
Yeah.
And maybe more than I like these other characters that we dealt with at 3 and 4. But all I know is I better have the fucking lipstick face demon back. I need the payoff of, like, I need that. You teased me, and they even tease you in the prequels that, like, we're gonna get to him, and I'm like, yeah, but so I don't know. It'll be interesting just to see that family again, especially because their minds were wiped. So we're going forward again. Finally, and I feel like
good.
And I don't know if it's been long enough to be like a legacy sequel, but I do feel like it's been a while that, like, because there's that window where, like, you wait too long to do a sequel, and you're like, well, it's been too long, no one cares. But then if you wait a little bit longer, now we're nostalgic for it. And I feel like, I wonder if Insidious 5, if people are kind of nostalgic for Insidious again.
I hope. I saw something just this past week. It was this reel of some guy like looking into the lens and just talking about like some people who fill in the blank call themselves horror fans, or say like some young people, you know, like, and one of the things he said was some young people say that Insidious is the scariest movie they've ever seen, and they call themselves horror fans. And he just keeps going one thing after the other, and it sounds very, you know, like sarcastic and cynical. And then you get to the very end of it and he says like, and to all that I say, welcome.
Okay.
And I was just kind of like, yeah, exactly, because I was just kind of like, I was waiting for it to land. I was like, I don't know if it wasn't that long. It was like maybe 90 seconds at the longest. And I was just kind of like, am I gonna need to watch this all the way to the end? Like, we'll get to the point. So, and because I'm terrified by Insidious, it's not my number one, but it is in my top 10, sir. And then when he got to the end, I was just kind of like, oh, that's nice. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the same journey I went on when you're telling me this. I'm like, fuck this guy. I was even making the fuck this guy face, you know.
But cool, Insidious 5, now that you've refreshed my memory and gave me a little bit more to nibble on, like, okay, I'm excited for it. I don't want to think about what I want to happen, because I don't do that anymore, because I either get disappointed that it doesn't, or I get disappointed that it does and it's not handled properly.
Yeah.
So,
I almost don't even, if the trailer comes out, I'm like, I don't even think I'm going to watch it. I just want to go see Insidious 5.
Yeah. Ticket is bought.
I will say, yeah. Also, you know, I think it's neat that what do I want to call him? Tom Wilson.
Patrick Wilson. Yes.
Butthead. Why? It's the Patrick Wilson, you know, I love when actors spend so much time on sets, and like you can learn so much from different people. Like let's and it's a horror movie, and it's a horror movie that you were part of this franchise and you're in The Conjuring. Like, what have you absorbed? What are you going to bring to this? Like, I'm really looking forward to that.
It's like Tony Perkins with Psycho 3, and I love Psycho 3, so
fuck yeah. One little thing I just thought was a nice touch, little thing that was neat, was that Renee's watching Carnival of Souls on TV.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, like if you looked at the ghosts in Insidious 1 and 2 and go,
it was Lorraine though, wasn't it?
Oh, was it Lorraine?
I think it was Lorraine.
No.
In the flashback, maybe.
No, maybe? I thought it was Renee at home. Pretty sure it's Renee at home.
Okay, whatever. Whoever it was.
Yeah.
Carnival of Souls in the movie. I was like, oh, there you go.
1000%. Like, that's the design of where these ghosts came from. So like I thought it was a nice homage, because that movie is just foundation and some dark circles, you know, and
right.
They're scary as fuck.
Yeah.
Unsettling. Not scary, but just disturbing.
It's
fucking
but
that movie.
transfixing. Like I watched that movie. There's nothing else happening. I'm not looking at my phone.
Right.
I'm not doing anything else. I am watching Carnival of Souls. I love
it. You don't love this.
No, and I'm really sad about it, because for a while, this one would have ranked pretty high. I would go like, it's flawed, but it's, and I used to say, I don't know how I'm going to feel. People change. But I used to be like, and it's flawed, but it's not. And I would gesture to say a sequel. And, you know, at least it's not. And I don't know if I'm going to continue feeling that way, because I got to say, when it was over, the problematic areas of the movie were not only problematic, like in theory, like I kind of took them like punches myself. I was a little fatigued and a little upset when the movie was over. I was kind of like, I'm over a lot of what this movie offered me, and here's hoping so is Patrick Wilson.
Let's see.
I mean, you know, when he makes Insidious 5 and everything. But so we'll see what the components are of what comes, and how I, you know, evaluate those. But this one, it was the roughest sit yet, and even though I can acknowledge the strengths and things that I enjoyed, I don't own it. I rented it off Redbox, and I'm not gonna own it.
I own all of them.
Yeah, but you gotta like room of
I do. But
I'm diminishing my collection more and more every day.
Yeah, it's true. As flawed as the sequels are, though, there are things I like in each of them enough to own them. But like you, this was like the least I've enjoyed watching too. In the end, I think my final thought is this. It feels like an extension of the first movie. Like, I like that it does kind of connect, but it doesn't feel like a real story that they're trying to tell so much as an excuse to extend it into something more. And just the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just like, did anyone really have the passion to tell this story, or did someone just come up with how can we extend, not just come up with a sequel, extend the first movie?
Yeah.
And they extended into some areas that I didn't need extending. And boy, what could have been if we had, like, you know, like a real organic story. I don't need every sequel to stand on its own.
No.
Where, like, oh, you can come in and just watch part 2. I like when sequels connect. Friday the 13th is all kind of connected, and you know,
kind of.
So yeah, no, but I like that this one still ties to the first one.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really necessarily feel like an organic narrative.
Yeah,
A to B to C.
The first step is,
and I wish it was
was
more of a movie and less of an exercise in continuation.
Because the first step, as far as the continuity, as I already expressed, I trip over. And I don't mean the flashback, I trip over that too, but the next immediate moment, just like with
interrogation scene,
with the interrogation scene, I'm just kind of like, because I was watching that like almost completely enwrapped in the screen, kind of going like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I don't think I'll be satisfied, but let's see what they do. And I'm watching it and I'm just kind of like, oh, that's why. Because what the fuck? That was my second note. And I mean, my major, strike against the movie, and it because everything else kind of stems from that. It's hard. It's harder to get on board with what follows, and that's why. I mean, another thing, I understand making horror movies fucking hard, man. Like back in the day when I used to like go to a Blockbuster and rent them once a week, and sometimes see even as many as like 2 or 3 new horror movies a week, conceivably, like in a night even, or like 2 the night of, and then the next one the next day, whatever, so I can return them all before I have to pay that late fee. I remember a lot of them were thumbs down, but a lot of them had components that I enjoyed, and a lot of them, even the steadiest trend was open strong and peter out, and by the end completely unravel. And I gotta say, at least this movie doesn't do that. So it's singular, and it's definitely not forgettable. And right. There's, and if I ever see it again, like I'll probably, I got another pod, so who knows, maybe I'll watch it again some other day. But as far as owning it and watching it for my own benefit, I don't see that happening. Anyway, I already said that. Sorry, I'm talking.
That's all good. Oh, that sounds like we're done if we're talking circles.
Right.
So thank you for joining me and going down this rabbit hole with me.
Yeah.
We'll be back. We are going to talk about 3. We are going to talk about 4. So until then.
Oh, you fucking suck.